This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of My River District, a show all about Owen Sound, the businesses, and why locals love it here. And I am sitting down with one of the people in this town that knows most about the locals, I think, in all of history at this point in time.
Well, to a certain point. I don't know much beyond, say from 1960 to 1980. I haven't gotten to that part yet, but we're getting there.
So this is Richard Thomas of Richard Thomas Communications, and he's written how many books now?
I've come up to 22.
22 books.
Yeah, about that.
Mostly
pretty much all about Owen Sound. Yeah, some of the novels took place in Owen Sound and other areas, but all of the non-fiction books are about Owen Sound.
Okay. Yeah, you have one character that appears in the fiction books, correct?
D.B. Murphy, my detective.
D.B.
Yes,
Murphy.
that's right.
Yes.
And his merry band of characters, all of whom follow him through all 8 novels.
There's 8 novels.
There are 8 novels, that's right.
Okay, well, I'm looking for a new series to pick up, so
there you
as long as there's some vampires and werewolves in it, I'm on board.
Yeah, not a lot of that in Owen Sound's past, though. You might be surprised
that
what
might
is
be
in Owen
from
Sound's
1930
past.
to 1980.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't
exactly.
know. Thank you for coming and being on this show.
My pleasure.
You've been on the River District podcast before, and I always love talking to you about the history of Owen Sound and what you're working on and things like that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now?
Well, right now I have a couple of projects on the go. The first one is a history of the King's Royal Hotel in the Balmy Beach area. I'm writing a book and I'm creating an exhibition for the Community Waterfront Heritage Center, which will be on this summer and include many artifacts from the King's Royal Hotel. So for people who don't know, in 1899, the McLaughlin Pleasure Grounds opened at Balmy Beach.
Oh,
and the Pleasure Grounds were the place that Owen Sounders went in the summer to have their picnics and their summer entertainment. There was a 9-hole golf course, there was horseback riding, there was soccer fields, football fields, baseball diamonds, picnic areas, and it was really the place that people went in the summer to enjoy the good weather. There was no road to Balmy Beach at that time, however, so you had to take a ferry. From downtown Owen Sound. You caught the ferry at the 10th Street Bridge and rode the ferry out to the 400-foot dock that they had built out from Balmy Beach. And that's how you got there. Things went so well that they decided that what was really missing was a hotel. So in 1902, they built the Balmy Beach Hotel, the King's Royal Hotel. It was a 110-room grand hotel built in the Spanish style with a 100-foot tower on the front that was completely lit up with electric lights, which in 1902 was a big deal. Believe me, electric lights were a big deal. It was so bright that it could be seen from Griffith Island on a clear night, the tower at the King's Royal Hotel. You know, they really envisioned that it would be a grand hotel much in the same way as Muskoka hotels were grand hotels. But the problem was people wanted to go to Muskoka. They didn't want to go to Owen Sound, which was attempting to be Muskoka. So following its first year, the King's Royal had about 10% occupancy per season, which was not enough to keep the place alive. So in 1916, the hotel was actually torn down. So it lasted 14 years. Was not open for 4 of those years, but you know, was quite a place. And when people see the picture, they can't believe that was in fact at Balmy Beach.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's such a spectacular looking place. Now when they tore down the hotel though in 1916, they left the theater, which was a 500-seat theater, up, and it later became the Balmy Beach Dance Pavilion. And the Balmy Beach Dance Pavilion had the biggest dance floor in Ontario. And it was the place to go, I'll tell you. everybody went to the Balmy Beach Dance Pavilion, and it drew performers like Louis Armstrong played there.
Really?
The Tommy Dorsey Orchestra played there. If you don't know big bands, that might not mean much,
Well.
but you know, I worked in radio for many years,
Sure.
so I know big bands. So it was a big deal, that place, and it was in the news all the time. And it lasted till 1967. It was torn down.
Oh, wow.
And it was really rock and roll that was the demise of the Balmy Beach Dance Pavilion.
Because people didn't want to go dance to rock and roll?
Well, no, they didn't. They
Really?
went and they listened to rock and roll, but they didn't dance like dance. So it was quite interesting, and for a large part of its history, the Lloyd Kibler Orchestra, which was a local dance band, was the house band at the Balmy Beach Dance Pavilion, and I reached out to people to share their stories about the dance pavilion or the hotel, if there were anyone left that remembered it. And I've gotten quite a few responses about the dance pavilion. And in fact, I've got half a dozen audio recordings that people have submitted of the Lloyd Kibler Orchestra. Two of the recordings are actually at the Balmy Beach Dance Pavilion.
That's so cool.
And the other ones were recorded in the CFOS studios because they used to do live to vinyl recordings of local acts in the studios at CFOS.
So when the dance pavilion was there then a road out to Balmy Beach?
There in about 1910, they had finally built a road out to Balmy Beach. The problem wasn't so much the road, it was a bridge over the Indian River. At that time, there was not a bridge, and Sarawak Township was not, the most flush township in terms of coming up with the money to build a bridge over the Indian River just for some Owen Sound hotel. So around 1910, they did get a road out there. It was not a road as we would think of roads today. It was more of a track. But it was good enough for people to go out, and in fact, bus tours started going out at that time as well. So
that's wild.
All the time that the hotel was failing, the pleasure grounds were quite popular, and still people were there all summer long picnicking. There would be intermunicipal baseball tournaments. So Durham would send their baseball team up to play the Owen Sound team, and thousands of people. They had a grandstand that would seat 1,000 people. They would all come out to watch these hot rivalry ball games or football games in some cases with surrounding communities. So it was quite a place. Lots of lacrosse too, by the way. Out
there should be.
Yes, of course.
It's funny though, because I understand why the hotel wouldn't do well. It's a day trip.
It is a day trip, and what they were trying to attract, though, were the tourists who would come from the United States. In fact, in the last 2 years of the hotel's existence, it was owned by let's see if I can get the name right, the Duluth and Detroit Marine Transportation Company. That's wrong. I know it's wrong. But it was a company from Chicago. Chicago, Duluth, and Great Lakes Transport Company. That was it. It's a bit of a mouthful. So they had two grand ships called the North American and the South American, which traveled from Chicago, and they came in Kings Royal. You could buy a package to sail to Owen Sound, spend a few nights at the Kings Royal Hotel, and then get on the next ship and continue your circuit of the Great Lakes. And in those days, Great Lakes cruising was quite popular. That's how the Owen Sound Transportation Company actually started, was not just package freight, but also Great Lakes cruises. So you could buy a 5-day package or a weekend package. Weekends were $10 to spend 2 nights and have all your meals.
Sure, but you were also probably making $150 a year.
Yeah, well, I know. But the cruises were so popular that when Owen Sound Transportation finally got out of the package freight business, they still were full with passengers, and they could have kept going. But trucking really knocked out the package freight, which is what paid for it all. So it's a fascinating history, the whole idea of Great Lakes cruising as a thing, because it's so foreign to us now.
Well, river cruising is all the rage in Europe.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to go on that. I don't want to be on big water.
No.
That's terrifying. Yeah. Put me on a river somewhere.
I don't mind big water.
I get seasick just looking at the bay.
Okay.
Anyways, Are there any bones or anything left of the hotel or the dance?
I understand there are a couple of stone pillars out there,
Okay.
and there are a number of the original cottages are still out at Balmy. So part of the concept with the King's Royal Hotel is they sold cottage lots so that people could build their cottages there and be a part of the whole thing. And you'll find it interesting that you could get a cottage lot at Balmy Beach for $50 for a small lot and $75 for a large one.
Well, isn't anybody who made that investment back then sitting
yes.
pretty these days?
And in fact, I know one person, Tom McKay, who's formerly from the McKay brothers building downtown. Tom McKay has still got a family cottage out at Balmy Beach, and it's one of the original cottages
Really?
from the King's Royal Hotel and McLaughlin Park days.
And they've kept it together.
Yep. Absolutely. And
That's
so
wild.
it's you know, it's a part of our past. I understand that when the water levels are just right, you can still see the pilings from the 400-foot dock going out into the water as well.
Really? So if you went down Balmy Beach Road, is it Old Balmy Beach Road or?
It's the one that runs along the shore. I think that's
So
Old Balmy Beach.
Road.
Yeah.
So was it that close to?
It was right on the water.
No, but was it like the Owen Sound side of it?
It was south of where the Butchert Estate is.
Okay.
So closer to Owen Sound. But it
Interesting.
was quite a spectacular place in its day.
Isn't that wild that something like that existed? And if somebody hadn't spoken to a person like you or read your wonderful books.
Well, which will be, I hope this book will be a wonderful book. It certainly, I thought I knew everything about it because several other people, Andrew Armitage had written about the King's Royal Hotel, called it King's Royal a magnificent failure, which it was. I wish I could use that. But he wrote about it, but I've gone into much more detail. So, for example, I've learned that the King's Royal Hotel, after the second season, they tried to sell it every year.
Oh, really?
For the next 12 years.
Oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. And it turned over a number of times, but poor Mr. McLaughlin always held the mortgage. And so the ownership came back to him almost every season.
Oh, my goodness.
Regardless of whoever had purchased it.
Isn't that
So
wild?
it was quite a place. I uncovered a story about one of the people who came, and his name was Parkerson, and he was described in the news media as a silver-tongued orator from New Orleans.
Oh, boy.
So when they were dedicating the park in 1899, every time they dedicated a street with an American name, like Lincoln Boulevard, Mr. Parkerson would give a speech as the token American on site. And I found one story, and it said, Mr. Parkerson, who helped eliminate the mafia from New Orleans a few years ago. And I thought, what? So I went back and looked at the story, and yes, he was a silver-tongued orator. He was a lawyer. And what happened was the sheriff in New Orleans was murdered. He was assassinated. It was felt that the mafia had done it. So the first step was to arrest every Italian-American male in New Orleans. At the end, 12 of them went to trial. 11 were acquitted, but the local community talk was that the jury had been bought. And so they kept these guys in jail for their own protection, but Mr. Parkerson, silver-tongued orator that he is, revved the mob into a frenzy. They stormed the jail. They hung all the men.
I'm going to stop us right there.
Yeah.
We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we are going to learn more about this upcoming book.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Krista McKee here of Wandering Grey Bruce. I am so excited to bring to you the 5th season of the show. We're going to meet some very exciting and interesting people. Stay tuned. This season, we are going to Chantry Island, visiting southern Grey County to explore barn quilts, and we have an exclusive interview with the Coast Guard at Tobermory. So join me on Rogers TV.
Baking for Change is coming this fall, and I'm your host, Wendy Pauls. We'll feature some of Canada's best bakers like Jen and Astor, sharing their favorite recipes. And you can bake along with us at home, while supporting refugee youth like Crystal. And the amazing work of UNICEF Canada.
Check for Days and Times.
On Rogers TV.
Hey, I'm Jay Crawford.
And I'm Cedric Gano. And make sure you tune in on Attack Rap every week
on Rogers TV to make sure you know what's going on with your Owen Sound Tech.
Welcome back to My River District. I'm sitting down today with Richard Thomas of Richard Thomas Communications, and we've been talking about your book about the hotel,
King's Royal Hotel.
King's Royal Hotel out in Balmy Beach.
You bet.
Oh my goodness.
So to finish the story of Mr. Parkerson, so all of these men are lynched and a grand jury is convened, and the grand jury in fact congratulated Mr. Parkerson on his efforts. And the mayor of New Orleans also sent him a letter congratulating him on his efforts on their behalf.
Oh my goodness.
Different times than they are today, that's for darn sure. The other book that I'm working on, since you asked, is about Chi-Chi-Mon's 50th anniversary. A lot of people are surprised to hear that Chi-Chi-Mon's 50, but in fact, she was built in 73, 74 and sailed for the first time on the ferry route in September of 1974.
So it was, so I only just now put together side launch and side launch.
Ah, yes.
I never really understood that that was an actual thing that they
thing.
did with boats.
Oh, absolutely, and it's lots of shipyards do it, but it's the only kind of launch they did at the Collingwood shipyard.
They just push it in?
It was a little more complicated than that, but the side launch always drew, like, thousands of people would come to see these side launches. And generally speaking, bulk freight carriers are what they built in Collingwood.
Right.
So the Chi-Chi-Mon was a little bit of a different project for them. I was fortunate enough, I put out a call to former shipyard workers, and I interviewed about 10 former shipyard workers who told me about working on Chi-Chi-Mon and what some of the challenges were. And it was really interesting because I was touched by the fact that to a person, and it was all men that I interviewed, but to a person, they were all so proud to know that Chi-Chi-Mon was still sailing. And it was really touching. And you know, the comment, at least 3 of them said, well, we built really good ships in Collingwood. And you know, they did, but the shipyard's been closed since '86, so it's almost forgotten, except for Chi-Chi-Mon, which is such a symbol of Collingwood shipbuilding excellence.
So all the other ships
A lot of them,
other places
there are
around the
some of
world?
them still on the water, but not many of them. Chi-Chi-Mon was hull 205.
Okay.
So the 205th boat that they had built in Collingwood. And I think it went up to 245, I think, maybe, just off the top of my head. But it's been a very interesting project, and I have put out a call as well, which is I think what we ended up chatting about, to people to share their stories of Chi-Chi-Mon. Because, and I was talking to a reporter this morning about this, you know, Chi-Chi-Mon is so much more than just a mode of travel. You know, for many families, Chi-Chi-Mon is their place. It's a part of their family and a part of their summer vacation every year, or you know, people have had special events on Chi-Chi-Mon. It really is so much more than just a ferry.
And even if you haven't been on the boat,
Absolutely.
just living in Owen Sound, it's there every single winter. You know all about it. That's your boat, and it belongs to us.
And that's exactly what I said to Owen Sound Transportation when we were talking about the book. I said, you know, this is not your ship. This is our ship. We all collectively, this is our ship. And everybody has such a personal connection with Chi-Chi-Mon. So I am hoping people will share their stories. I'm doing a, you know, sort of I tend to do chronological histories, so I am sort of starting with a bit of history of the Owen Sound Transportation Company, which has been running the ferry service since 1931.
Wow.
And all of the different vessels that were a part of it, and up to Chi-Chi-Mon, and including Nindawema, of course, which only sailed for 2 years and then sat at dockside for another 10 after that.
You can tell how old a person is based on whether or not they know what the Nindawema is or not.
I suppose that's true. I've got one great picture of the Nindawema, and the burned out remains of the Clarenville floating restaurant are right in front of it.
Yeah.
So that really puts a date to it, because I remember when the Clarenville burned down.
Oh, jeez.
But it's been a fascinating book to work on. I've had stories from people who have submitted photos. They've talked about special moments with family members. I've had 3 couples approach me who have been married on Chi-Chi-Mon. And in fact, One of the weddings was a friend's daughter, Emily Vining, and her husband, Matt Beauparlant. They met 10 years ago for the first time on Chichimon on a crossing.
Oh, come on.
And 2 years ago, they got married on the rear deck of Chichimon. Now, here's a little known fact. When you get married on Chichimon, you have to ask the captain for the correct longitude and latitude, because on the marriage license, you have to specify where you were married. And that's the only way to do it on Chichimon, is to have the longitude and the latitude of where the ship was when you tied the knot.
Can ships' captains?
No.
No, they can't
No,
marry you?
you have to take an officiant along with you. I think that might have been, maybe back in the 1800s or 1700s.
And maybe only in the States.
That was real, and maybe only in the movies.
Yeah. Oh, so glamorous.
Yep, that's right. So anyway, there's been lots of fantastic stories about Chichimon, and of course, my personal connection with Chichimon is, of course, I worked for CKCO Television for many years, and in 1999, when they decided to leave Owen Sound and I decided to stay, Owen Sound Transportation Company was my first client for my video business.
Oh my goodness.
I've always had a connection, and a number of years ago I wrote what's been called the official history of the company, and it's called The Motorist Shortcut, 100 Years of the Owen Sound Transportation Company. So I've got a real connection, and I sail up. Last year was my first year doing 10 crossings, so I got my card stamped and I got my free crossing. It was so exciting. It was like a real milestone. It is a thing.
I think I've actually only been on the Chichimon like twice.
Oh my gosh.
I know. Again, I get seasick from just looking at the water.
Oh, well, I get that. I mean, I've been on a couple of pretty good rides on the Chichimon, pretty wild, and I don't get seasick, so I really find those very exciting. But it's interesting because Chichimon, again, more than transportation, it really is a destination for a lot of people. There are more and more people who drive to Tobermory and do the trip over and back. They're not going to Manitoulin at all. But for a lot of people, it's the biggest ship they'll ever have the opportunity to be on. Well,
and it's funny because a lot of people go to that annual dinner.
Yes.
The cruise dinner.
The cruise dinner.
In late April, I think. They've been going for years.
Yeah. And I talked to somebody from the Scenic City Order, and this year's is sold out.
Already?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So Chichimon will be leaving May 4th, and the sailing is usually just the week before.
Right.
Yeah, so it's quite a tradition around the Chichimon, and everyone's got a story, and I want their stories. I want them to share them.
And what year was that large decal put on?
Oh, golly, that would be probably 5 years ago, I think.
That's it?
Yeah.
Feels like a million years ago.
Pretty recent. It might be more than 5,
We've lost time.
Time tends to all blend together, right?
Absolutely.
I know the Ontario Northland paint job. I know those years.
Okay.
I know the Owen Sound Transportation blue and white paint job, and then this new one. And those are sort of the 3 epochs of the Chichimon.
Now, it's always been the Chichimon.
Always been the Chichimon, and it was named by Donald Kishig from Cape Croker.
Okay.
And there was a big contest across the province, and they got, I think, 70 or 80 entries for that one. Interestingly, when they named Indowema, they got 600 entries. And Lenore Kishig, who's a friend of mine and Donald's daughter, told me the story about the contest that he won that he didn't know he had entered. Because she actually wrote the essay and entered the name under his name, and so the first he knew about it when he got the letter of congratulations that they had chosen his name for Chichimon.
Oh my goodness, isn't that hilarious?
Oh, it's a great story.
And again, how so many relationships work.
And there are so many stories around that vessel as well. And probably it's going to be on the water another 30 years anyway.
Wild.
Because the hull apparently is in amazing shape. A few years ago they put new engines in. I mean, they're continually revising and updating the boat, and so she'll go on for a long time.
But you're still looking for people to actively send you stories.
I'm still looking for people to send me stories,
and
absolutely.
And you do that at chichimon50@gmail.com.
That is correct. Or any other way you can find me, you can go through my website, richardjthomas.ca. Happy to have it that way. Any way I can get it, I'll take the stories. And if you have photos or videos, I'm happy to have those as well.
So we've got about 4 minutes left.
Okay.
And I know that I had to leave a little bit more time because I am going to ask you, why do you, as a local, love it here?
Why do I love it here?
Now fill 3 minutes.
I can get it down to probably 2 sentences, which is what you said immediately. I grew up in the lower mainland of British Columbia. So for me, to feel comfortable someplace, I need rocks and water and trees.
Welcome to Owen Sound.
And Owen Sound has got it all. You know, I lived in Thunder Bay, I lived in BC, I lived in Kitchener, and Owen Sound to me, when I came here, felt like home. And so for me, there was no discussion about whether to leave or not. Once I got here, I thought, all right, this is it. What could be better than being in Owen Sound? It's got everything I need. Rocks and water and trees, and a lot of nice people to boot. Arts and culture, which of course are very important to me. I've been deeply involved with the library and with the art gallery and Little Theater. So, you know, for me, Owen Sound has just got it all. And of course, as a young man, it had the number one requirement, which was it was close enough for family to visit, but too far for them to drop in. And that was high on my list of locations I needed to live.
Not something as born and bred local can say.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
And in fact, many families have generations of family that can just drop by.
They have. And of course, you know, I'll never be an Owen Sounder, but I'd like to think my kids are, because they were born here.
They were born here?
Yep, absolutely.
And now you're working with the market and you run that every
Yes,
Saturday.
yeah, my wife and I run the Owen Sound Farmers Market, and there's another Owen Sound tradition that, you know, I just love. I used to go to the market every week long before we got involved with it, and when the opportunity came up to fill the position as managers, I mean, we jumped at the chance.
Sure.
Because it's just so much fun, and it's such a great place.
And that in itself feels like home. I mean, I bring my daughter nearly every single Saturday, and we go in and we buy a Rice Krispie Square from one vendor, and we get a drink from another, and then we sit down and we have to eat all of this at about 9 o'clock in the morning. So she's really hopped on sugar by the time we leave.
I've seen that.
Yeah, right? And she feels comfortable there.
Yep.
You know, like that is the first place, you know, she's handed money to somebody, she's paid for something, and she's felt comfortable to do that. And a lot of that is through the management and the vendors that are there every week, and how important that is for our community to come together.
Well, it's got an ambiance, right? The Owen Sound Farmers Market is almost 180 years old. It is one of the longest running organizations in Owen Sound, and it is one of the longest traditions in Owen Sound, the Saturday market.
Oh my goodness.
And I love it.
I hadn't realized it was so long.
It predates Owen Sound.
It explains
was
why
the
they have
village
to-
of Sydenham
Right.
when the market started.
That explains why they have to put on the storm windows every winter.
That's right. That's right.
Oh my goodness.
There are not many buildings left that you have to do that, put on the old wooden frame storm windows, but it's a heritage building.
Oh my
so to have new windows fabricated, of course, would be, maybe you can do something with the city for me and, you know, get that rolling.
I'm just going to go ahead and say, I'm going to present you with your Locals Love It Here official badge of honor. You are absolutely a
Awesome.
local, and you're absolutely loving it here.
Thank
and
you.
Helped to make Owen Sound just a wonderful place. And it's so historically significant that to be able to pick up one of your books at the Ginger Press is a great option. And you can read it and you learn more and more about your city. Maybe you're sitting at the farmer's market and one of the stories is about the farmer's market, and you're living in the history of Owen Sound.
That's right.
So thank you for bringing that to Owen Sound.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I want to say thank you to all of you for tuning in to my River District. I hope to see you next time.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Hello, I'm Liz Dowdswell, Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. In 2008, carbon monoxide, a deadly invisible gas, killed an entire family in our province. That tragedy led to a new law requiring homes with potential CO sources to have alarms. John Gignac's family members passed away that day, and he shares his story to save others.
Please make sure you have working CO alarms in your home. Protect your family today.
It's closing time, and you stayed out longer than you planned. So now you can't drive, and the buses have stopped running. You could always call your girlfriend. Or maybe your roommate? What about your best friend?